This week on Christian World News, in Africa, the massive cuts in USAID funding are affecting some of the most vulnerable people on earth. Funding for critical care, education, and medical supplies have all been vaporized overnight. See how relief groups on the ground are trying to navigate this new crisis. Plus, in a place once known as the murder capital of the world, a revolution is underway. See how soccer, faith, and hope are transforming lives and redeeming neighborhoods. And this pastor made a choice he's never made before, and his congregation is spared from tragedy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas. My colleague Wendy Griffith is on assignment. U.S. cuts in foreign aid are taking their toll on vulnerable populations. In one part of Africa, health centers struggle to provide life-saving services. Schools are closing and essential survival programs are at risk. We take you to the southern edge of the Sahara Desert to see the devastating effect on people who have counted on America to keep them alive. On a rough and bumpy Sahara Desert road, a convoy pushes forward. CBN News journeyed west from the Chad-Sudan border to Fashana, home to nearly 200,000 people, including 60,000 refugees escaping Sudan's brutal civil war. At the Fashana Health Center, we meet Dr. Al-Bashir Mahamat, a once hopeful caregiver who now struggles against overwhelming despair.
The impact of the financial cuts from the American government have been huge because it affects all of our services.
Dr. Mahamat explains the clinic, designed for 10,000, now serves 6 times that number. Weeks ago, he learned about the loss of USAID funding, a lifeline for women and children here struggling with malnutrition.
We've had to reduce the number of personnel, which means a greater workload. My big worry is that if these services are no longer available, then these children will not survive.
The clinic's operations are also supported by World Vision, a Christian aid organization that recently helped bring fresh water to the health center, all thanks to private donations. Now, even World Vision is deeply concerned about the future here.
The U.S. has been a leader in the world for many years in terms of helping the poor and serving the most vulnerable. Any administration should be able to take time to review their programs. The challenge is when those programs are suspended, then critical life-saving activities, food support, vaccinations for kids, support for malnourished children, all these activities are critically needed.
Hello, class.
At a nearby refugee school for Sudanese children,
Yes.
today Abdul Rashid is doing his passion, teaching English to these young Sudanese children. One of his biggest concerns today is the issue of funding from the United States. The fact that the USAID has cut its funding to the school has had a tremendous impact. For several years, U.S. aid paid for an accelerated program for the camp's brightest students. When the Trump administration slashed 90% of the organization's global foreign contracts, the support vanished.
When the accelerated program got cut, most of the students left the school and headed to Libya. Some went to Europe. Others died at sea trying to cross the Mediterranean. Some were even kidnapped by the RSF and forced to fight. That's why the decision to stop the U.S. aid funding is so upsetting.
Shula says America's help has played a crucial role in fighting poverty and hunger around the world. And that support has been a cornerstone of the nation's soft power.
I think it's critical that the U.S. government continue to be out in the world and doing good things for populations in need. I think it makes us all safer, more secure, and more prosperous.
For millions on this continent, U.S. intervention has meant the difference between life and death. For people like Florence Makumina, that support through the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR, saved her life when she was diagnosed with HIV.
The departure of donors and donor funding is a major setback. We are like orphans, we have no one to turn to. All the gains are being reversed. We are going back to the old days when being HIV positive was equated to death.
As PEPFAR teeters on the edge, fears of a deadly reversal are growing.
If the U.S. assistance for HIV is not restored, there will be an additional, in the next 4 years, 6.3 million AIDS-related deaths.
Food assistance, too, is on the brink of collapse.
We are afraid for our lives. Those who are strong may manage to work, but the rest of us will suffer in silence.
Hile Sige, one of nearly 3 million Ethiopians in the Tigray region depending on U.S. aid, now faces a devastating reality. No food for the next 3 months. Ethiopia, once the largest recipient in sub-Saharan Africa, has now seen all support stopped.
Going without nourishment for even 1 day is difficult, much less for 90 days. Consequently, we feel that we are destined for death.
We're all for good stewardship. But we have to remember that if we begin to cut and slash indiscriminately, these are men, women, and children created in the image and likeness of God.
Reverend Gabriel Salquero, a missionary to Zambia, Tanzania, and Malawi, has seen firsthand the impact of U.S. support. He is one of the few evangelical voices challenging the Trump administration's decision to slash foreign aid.
As a pastor, I take seriously the call of Jesus. I was hungry and you fed me, naked and you clothed me. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. And part of the work of USAID is collaborating with Christian organizations and others to provide this very real ministry of Christ.
Back at the refugee camp, Abdul Rashid shares a warning about the future.
Since there is no hope of getting an education here, many students are trying to migrate to Europe and America. Not everyone who wants to go there is a good person with good intentions. I guarantee there will be problems in the future. This crisis could turn into a security problem, and it will end up costing the West more than what it would cost them to fund the education here in the camp.
One of the organizations that partners with USAID for many, many years is the Christian organization World Vision, and its president and CEO, Edgar Sandoval, joins me now for this story. Edgar, funds from USAID, as I mentioned, make up about 20% of World Vision's budget, close to about $300 million. What is the status of those funds right now?
Thank you, George. What I can tell you is that at World Vision, we shine the light of Christ around the world in some of the hardest places to be a child, with life-saving programs, such as the ones that you've reported in your segment. Some of that funding for us comes from the U.S. government, as you said, and these are things like access to food emergency assistance, access to clean water, basic health services for lactating moms and babies. And yes, some of that work has been impacted, and our hearts truly break for the people affected. That said, we are grateful that we have been able to restore some of those funds. We've received waivers, and we are restarting the work, some of that work. Now, over the long term, George, what I will say is that we believe through God's faithfulness, the generosity of his people, World Vision is going to continue to live into our calling to shine the light of Christ in some of these hardest places, as we've done for the last 75 years.
And for the last 75 years, you have been ministering around the world, but you've also relied, as I mentioned, on the U.S. government. What is the impact to some of these programs that you guys fund around the world in Africa and Asia? What does it mean for people's lives if they don't have those critical services that you guys provide?
Yes, George. What I would say is that the impact is real. It's real. There's lives at stake. There's food in warehouses that needs to be distributed. There's clinics like the one you mentioned in Chad and other places that are now operating with even less funding. We have to remember that before this foreign aid reduction, the world was already seeing a $30 billion gap between humanitarian needs and the available funding. So that now is getting even harder to provide life-saving assistance. And this is one of the things that motivates us as people of God. We have a bold goal to reach 300 million people, to stand in the gap and reach 300 million people with life, hope, and a future between now and the year 2030. And we believe with God's faithfulness and the generosity of our donors, we will be able to do that. And we're inviting everyone to join us, to check us out, check out our website, worldvision.org, and join this movement of God to stand in the gap.
I appreciate that. And if folks want to support the great work that you are doing, you can go to cbnnews.com, but you can also go to World Vision's site. I've seen their work around the world, and you guys do a terrific job. And may God continue to give you wisdom as you navigate these new territory and new waters ahead. Edgar, thank you so much for coming on the broadcast.
Thank you, George.
You're welcome. In a city once known as the murder capital of the world, see how soccer, faith, and hope are transforming lives and redeeming neighborhoods. The city of Medellin in Colombia was once known as the murder capital of the world. Well, today it is undergoing a revolution sparked by faith and soccer. Brody Carter brings us the story of how one man's vision is transforming the city.
High in the Andes Mountains lies Medellin, once known as the world's murder capital.
The psychologists would call Medellin the culture of death, and that's how it become, just so much death, so much killing.
Given the cartel's prevailing influence, children learned to kill before they could read. But even in this environment of violence, a different kind of revolution began taking root, one fueled by soccer, faith, and hope. American missionary Mark Wittig arrived in 1985 when bullet-riddled bodies filled the streets and young boys were recruited as soldiers. Wittig, though, looked beyond the death and saw their love for soccer. That became his way in.
When I turned 10 years old, I was already cleaning the guns from my dad.
Trained to kill as a child, Alex Saldariega learned the drug trade from his father, a cartel leader.
One day, I went home after practice and my dad was waiting for me at the door with a list of people that we needed to kill that night.
For others, like Wilson Rogers, joining the cartel simply meant survival.
We were involved with these trucks and everything because we knew at that time that we needed money to survive.
When I was 11, I found out that my mom was working as a prostitute to provide for us. I left school and started selling drugs to get my mom out of that life.
We had guys taking, mini Uzi submachine guns to games with them. I went to jail for them. I went and got them out of police stations, that had been captured, and then had them in my house as well.
Even faced with this daily dose of violent reality, one thing remained more popular here than drugs, power, and money: football.
Anybody will either go see a soccer game or play soccer. So it's just a non-threatening context.
A simple soccer game led by Mark sparked a movement.
A couple of weeks later, I began to organize a tournament for all these guys in the neighborhood. And he said, oh, this is a gringo that's a little different.
It wasn't just soccer. It was a connection to something greater.
The first practice, I went there and I saw a coach with a Bible in his hand.
I'll meet him out there on the soccer field. They're there. And, as the saying goes, they come for soccer and we sort of go for their souls.
That approach led to this, the opening ceremony for the Social and Sport Corporation of Colombia, simply called Costa Col. It's become a sign of hope and new beginnings for the country, where former killers now coach and drug dealers become disciples. For Mark, the goal has been about transforming hearts. By grounding these young men in faith, he could raise up players to become leaders, trading violence for the gospel.
This neighborhood is called Granizal. It's where Alex grew up, and like many neighborhoods throughout Medellin, it's run by a gang leader. Nothing happens here without their permission. And although they fuel crime, violence, and drugs, they've given Costa Col the green light to come in, serve the community, build soccer fields, and it's changing the country.
Manantiales, a large community for Colombia's displaced, houses thousands who escaped the war between paramilitaries and guerrillas. They live here without electricity or running water, unless it's provided by the local gang for a price. In this neighborhood, an unlikely partnership gives children something rare, a place to play. Coste Cole worked with local gang leaders to build this field under one condition, that kids can hear the gospel.
Our coaches have really earned a good reputation in the neighborhoods. You know, even the gangs like them. Even the gang leaders want their kids to train with our teams.
Today, it's a sanctuary for thousands of children, a community where they can find mentors, guidance, and hope away from the darkness that still lingers over the city.
We learn from Jesus, his knowledge and all that is perfect.
Sports help teach us the values of Jesus, help us to distract ourselves from school, and help us to see ourselves.
Consisting of 3 soccer fields, a complex, and a brownie business that pays for half of its operations, Coste Cole reaches 45,000 lives and counting. Semi-professional teams and American universities are also involved, developing talent, hosting soccer clinics, and serving the locals.
Like when I decided to give my life to Christ that night, a lot of blessings started coming to my life.
For the glory of God, a lot of them are already working and serving for the ministry.
From the makeshift fields in Manantiales to grand stadiums of the city, Coste Cole isn't just about a game. It's forging a future. Here, faith and soccer serve as powerful allies, proving that together, they can transform lives and rebuild communities.
This is a testimony of God's grace and mercy. God is actively working to redeem this world. And if there's an example of that, it's Coste Cole and Medellin.
Now that a new season's upon us, it's clear that the true victors aren't just here on the soccer fields, but it's found in the hearts of those who've fallen in love with the transforming love and grace of Jesus Christ. Reporting in Bajo, Colombia, Brody Carter, CBN News.
Great story, Brody. You know, here in the U.S., we call it soccer, but down there in Medellin, Colombia, it's called football. Faith and football. Folks, coming up, how one decision changed the lives of an entire congregation. This pastor calls it an act of God. You'll hear his story when we come back. Welcome back to Christian World News. God's leading spares a church from tragedy. Here in the U.S., a series of storms have devastated states in the south and central parts of the country with tornadoes, heavy rain, and flooding. Members of one Kentucky church are thanking God no one was hurt after a powerful twister destroyed their main sanctuary. Wendy Griffith tells us why the building sat empty during its usual Wednesday night prayer service.
Pastor Tim, right behind you, incredible destruction. That was your main worship building, correct?
It was. Yes, it was.
Wednesday night, April 2nd, the forecast over Paducah, Kentucky didn't look good. And Pastor Tim Turner of Christ Community Church did something he'd never done before.
But we canceled that night because of the storms. So it is the first time in my 35 years of pastoring that we've ever done that. We just feel like that was an act of God.
I don't think anyone, like you said, would have survived that.
Well, if you look at all these blocks, it was a block wall 18 feet high, and it all fell in, and the roof came in. And I doubt there would have been any survivors. So we're not mourning today. We're praising God.
Church member Lindsay Stanley says she and her husband rarely miss Wednesday night service.
But we had a feeling like we should just stay home. Actually, when we got the call that the church was gone, we were in the closet because the tornado had literally just gone past over our house. It was me, my husband, and our 2 daughters, and we were literally in the closet with helmets on and everything. It was that, like, this thing's coming.
The tornado hit just as the church had completed 5 years of renovation on their new sanctuary, wiping out thousands of dollars in new cameras, instruments, and lighting equipment.
We had just finished all the remodels. Matter of fact, on Monday, I had told someone, I said, we can slow down now. The sanctuary is finally beautiful. And on Wednesday, it was gone.
But Stanley sees it another way.
I truly believe that looks like a setback, but it's actually a setup. When I first started on that church about 4 years ago, the Lord told me this is an end times army. My dad was actually healed in that church, stage 4 cancer. We've had so many cancer healings and just good, like amazing moves of the Holy Spirit. And I truly believe like he knows that we needed a bigger place because we were outgrowing that sanctuary. And we thought it would be years and years down the road. And I think he's just like, you know what, let's go a little quicker and I'm going to help.
Pastor Tim, what is the silver lining in this devastation?
First and foremost is we are so thankful on church. And we had service here that night. We all linger after church. You know how church people are. We linger and talk. And there would have been people here. And the way it looks, the way that the structure, how it fell, it looked like the roof came off and the walls are all came off. They were 18-foot concrete walls. And nobody would survive.
Turner says the other good news, their old youth center building remained nearly untouched. And although smaller, can still be used for services until they can build something bigger.
Resilient people will build back. But, you know, we're so thankful.
Yeah.
God is so good to us. I preached it on Sunday morning. I want the world to know that this church still loves God, still trusts God, still believes in God.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Wow, talk about a miracle of miracles. By the way, you can get Christian World News delivered straight to your inbox. To sign up for our weekly email update, just go to cbnworldnews.com. We'll be back right after this. Finally, this week, we've been telling you about the move of God on U.S. college campuses. Well, he's still at it, working among students. Thousands came together at Southern Methodist University in Dallas this week for a Unite Us gospel event. The ministry reports that by the end of the evening, hundreds said yes to Jesus, with many getting baptized, while also adding that God is moving in this generation. The SMU Gospel Gathering was the latest in a series of Unite Us events on various college campuses so far this year. Great news. God moving among the colleges here in the U.S. Folks, that is it. That is it for this week's edition of Christian World News. Until next week, from all of us here, goodbye and God bless you.